Hello everyone. Working on a 19 Pacifica 3.6 liter, 85,000 miles, and we'll be installing the updated aluminum Dorman oil filter housing. First off, I'm going to start by draining the cooling system. And here's the updated oil filter housing by Dorman. It will have everything you need in it. It also has an updated oil filter, and the number is on the filter housing. We're going to lay out all the gaskets and make sure everything's there. And there's the housing and filter, the bolt kit, oil cooler, and the housing itself. The original one is plastic, and what happens is they leak coolant and water down in the intake valley, and it'll pool up in the bottom. We'll start by removing the air filter housing. Intake air temperature sensor, engine cover, so I've been sick for about 3 weeks, and I finally got my voice back, so it's good to get back and make some videos for you guys. And this one here is the purge line in the top of the intake. You got to be careful here you don't break the intake manifold. We'll pull the purge valve assembly. And all the wiring harness push pins, I spray oil penetrant on them so you can get them out without breaking them. Sometimes you'll still get one that'll break, but I've done jobs before where someone else has worked on it and pretty much everything under the hood is broken. Remove the back breather assembly. The map sensor. And Chrysler likes to put these red safety clips in there, and you pry them back, and then you can pull the connector off. And they're like Ford, they like to use all these little plastic push pins to hold their wiring harnesses in place. We'll pull the EGR connector. And a lot of these, what I'll do is I'll use two clip release tools together in unison as to not break them. And then there's the constant tension clamp for the EGR pipe. I'm going to put a 90-degree pick, kind of slide it in there, and then spray some oil in there to loosen it up. They'll basically bond themselves to the aluminum. And we'll pry off the clip for the throttle body. And we'll remove the throttle body. There's 4 bolts on that. Underneath that is a bracket that supports the intake manifold. And then there's more push clips. And then there's two 10mm bolts on the front of the intake manifold. and two 10mm bolts down on this metal bracket. And you won't be able to remove it until you loosen up the manifold and pry and pull up on the manifold, and then you can pull the bracket out. But you got to get the bolts out first. Kind of a pain in the butt. I'm using a long reach 1/4 inch Milwaukee ratchet, and with the 10mm deep swivel. Now we'll pull the upper intake manifold bolts. Those are 8mm. And lift up on the upper intake and then pull the bracket off the stud. Remove the bracket. Then you can remove the upper intake manifold. And you see there it's still kind of bonded onto that EGR hose. Just kind of finagle it, twist it. Set the intake off to the side. There's a sound deadener. Then pull the fuel line. And this is a plastic fuel rail, so you got to be careful. I use a 90-degree pick and push up on the release, the white release plastic piece, and then pull the fuel line off. And some more spraying. I'm going to spray all these injectors, the harnesses, and use a pick and pry up on those little red safety catches or locks, safety locks, I guess. And this is a Lyle. It's like a terminal release tool. It kind of works good on these. You can pinch the fuel injector connector together and pry it off there. Do that to all 6 injectors. And then on the back of this intake manifold, it's got 2 large push clips. And on the front main wiring harness, you'll pry it up and then you'll slide it towards the passenger side, and then it will lift off. Then we'll release the ignition coil connectors. They also have the safety pins. I'm using a 90-degree pick versus pressing in on with my fingers. That way as to not break these, because everything on this thing is plastic. Then we'll release all the connectors here on this passenger side. Disconnect the, I think those are the cam sensors. And this is the only one that broke right there. Even after spraying it. That happens every now and then. Some of these you really have to work on them. Pry off this front one. It's real stubborn. And slip this wiring out. And set the harness off to the side. And here's that real stubborn, large push clip or push pin on the back of the intake. I've seen it before where they break the whole back of the intake is busted off right there. And then pull the bolts for the lower intake manifold, 8mm bolts, and we're ready to lift that lower intake off. Just kind of hold the wiring off to the side and lift it up and out. Set that off to the side. And there's a rodent nest in the bottom of there. We'll pluck that out of there. Get the vacuum out. Vacuum up all the big chunks. Clean up around these intake ports. And stuff some shop rags in there. And I'll take the vacuum and some compressed air and see if I can blow out some bigger chunks in the bottom. And the oil pressure switch, we're going to pinch it together with some pliers and push it back, and you won't be able to get this completely off. You're just going to disconnect it and leave it there. And then pull the oil filter out. You can see here this original one's plastic. And then remove the bolts for the oil filter housing. Leave the oil cooler still attached. And then there's a coolant pipe at the back of this. You can see here there's quite a bit of coolant and oil pooled up down in the valley. This is the biggest pain right here, getting this pipe off without ruining it. We're going to pinch this constant tension clamp and pull it back. And then just start prying it, spraying, and use a pick and see if we can break this coolant pipe loose. without putting a hole in it. And as always, it's being real stubborn. There we go. And remove the oil filter housing. We'll inspect this hose, clean it up. This one looked good. I didn't ruin it. And I've got a Mighty Vac here. I'm going to go ahead and vacuum out most of the stuff, and there's mouse droppings in the bottom of here and other crud. And the NOx sensors down there, or I think both are 2 NOx sensors. So spray some brake cleaner down there, loosen it up. Pull out some of these bigger chunks. Basically just clean it out the best I can. And finish it off by blowing it dry. That should do. It looks pretty decent. So we'll put the original plastic housing in the vise and remove the oil pressure sensor. That will be reused and installed in the new housing. We'll install the oil cooler gaskets, mount the new oil cooler onto the new housing with new hardware. These are Torx heads. And all the torque specs are in the directions that are included in the kit. We'll torque down this oil cooler. And then this is a plug that comes in the kit. Some of these have a second sensor, and I think it's a coolant temp sensor. Since this one does not, install the supplied plug and then torque it down as per spec. I'll wrap the pressure sensor, oil pressure sensor, with some Teflon tape. And we'll torque that down. Then flip it upside down. Install the O-ring on the front and then the gaskets on the bottom. Install the seal for the oil filter cap. You can use engine oil, silicone, or I'm using some Sil-Glide. We'll lube up the seals and install the oil filter. And the updated filter number is on that aluminum plate that's on that orange cap there. And I like to put Sil-Glide on the seals on the bottom, just a small amount. So the housing can kind of settle in, not pinch anything. We'll do a final clean on the engine block. Clean these coolant passages in the one oil passage, or the two oil passages. And we're going to start the hose and the oil pressure wiring harness together. Slip those in. Reinstall the clamp. Stick my hand on the bottom there. Get this clamp, slide over, it's real stubborn. Then I like to index a clamp right back in the original witness mark on the hose. Do a double check to make sure all the gaskets are in place. And slip it down in there, push it into place. Install the bolts. and torque these bolts down, and you have a new updated oil filter housing on a 3.6 liter Chrysler Dodge. Then you basically just reinstall everything the opposite of removal. Alright, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you in the next video.